Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whatever the fuck you're tuning in. This is another episode of Tailgate Trash Talk brought to you by Backyard Sports. We're coming off a pretty tough weekend, so we're looking to bounce back this week. But how are you feeling, Bentley?
I have not seen my record from this weekend. I I felt pretty good about it going in. I got the LSU game right. Um, I did not get the South Carolina Alabama game correct, but all in all, I did not get headbutted by a cow this weekend, so I feel pretty good about that. The
Yeah.
same cannot be said for Mike Gundy.
Yes, very true. Yeah, we had a tough weekend. You had a better weekend than I did, but neither of us were over 500. So it was pretty tough. A lot of red on the board, as we can see here. It got off to a bad start on Friday night. We talked about it last week. Like Friday night, college football can be kind of weird. We got Cam Rising back. The line moved instantly when the Cam Rising news came out from 3.5 to like 6.5. Some books still had it at 6. But it closed right around 6.5 before the game started. And of course, drive number 1, I think it was play number 4, and Cam Rising gets rolled up on a little bit, and he has a visible limp the rest of the game. And it looks like he's going to be done essentially for the rest of this year. And the question was posed, will you come back for your age 35 season? And he said no. I think eight years is enough, or 7 years is enough. He won't come back for an 8th year, even if he was able to get another medical red shirt from the NCAA. So the question really coming out of this game is, this is loss number 2 for Utah, right? However, under the new playoff system, the season's not over. They still play in the Big 12. It's a power conference. But if Utah's down, it feels like this conference is very down, because we have Arizona's been underwhelming this year. We have Oklahoma State's been underwhelming this year. And you look at like it's K-State and Iowa State, and that might be really like right now kind of it in terms of the class of the Big 12. Although Colorado played Kansas State pretty well this past weekend, I don't think any of us really expect Kansas or Colorado to go on like a 5-game win streak down the stretch here. So you're looking at really one of the teams that we thought would really kind of be the class of the Big 12 this year is down, and it hasn't been another team that's really stepped up outside of maybe Iowa State, right? I know they've been kind of a pleasant surprise in the Big 12, but what are the prospects here as the season goes? Do you think Utah can get this thing righted with Isaac Wilson and make a run here and be a 2-loss Big 12 champion and maybe still get into the playoff?
I don't imagine that being the case. You and I both, before the season started, said that if Cam Rising plays, they're national title contender. And if he doesn't, then they probably won't even play for the Big 12 title, right? I still feel that way. I understand when you have a running back like Micah Bernard, you kind of want to lean on him, which what they tried to do Friday night with, I mean, you and I talked about it. I had multiple people telling me, like, not even college football fans, it was just kind of the big game on Friday night. They're like, man, Cam Rising, like, can't move. And he looked bad. You know, I felt bad for him, but
he had the glove on the hand too. It's clear that hand was still bothering him. Like he rushed back from the injury.
And we said that too. I mean, you asked me if it was a rush back because of the loss to Arizona, and I said yes. And it really, really felt that way, and it felt pretty obvious watching him Friday night. But they've lost talent each of the last 2 years to the NFL. We understand what that defense is in Utah. They have that home field advantage there in Salt Lake City, but it's like Cam Rising's been their offense for 4 years now. I mean, without Cam, we understand that they have no threat of a real passing game, and you can just kind of stack it with Bernard, and as good as he is in the rest of that backfield, I just don't see them competing after what we saw from K-State with Avery Johnson getting hurt and then coming back. And you mentioned Iowa State being really good this year, and Utah is really good this year too. 6-0. They play a wacky Friday night game this week. Like, we'll see about them, but I don't imagine that Utah gets this train back on the tracks as much as, as good as it is for college football to have them be exciting in these nighttime games. I just don't, without Cam, I don't see that being the case.
Yeah, you mentioned the boys in Provo. Like, is it time that we need to start giving BYU their flowers? Right? Are they the class of the Big 12?
It's going to
bully
happen.
ball against a couple of these bigger teams, and they've been successful doing that.
Yeah,
I mean they squashed a Baylor team that had looked frisky before that.
Yeah, for sure. And like, to the credit of BYU, they have gone into these games as, I guess more recently they've been favorites, but like they've came into the Big 12 as a team that nobody was talking about, right?
Right.
And they've kind of owned the conference up at this point. Between them and Iowa State, it's like two teams that, we I think you and I both agree that Iowa State would be good, but not 6-0 good.
No.
And then obviously BYU coming out of sort of out of nowhere. We have to give them their flowers, right? Like they've done, nothing but prove us wrong all year long.
Yep.
And now we have to take them seriously because, like you said, they've been playing big boy football and they'll run over you, man.
Yep. Yeah, and to that point, right, the BYU thing, BYU was picked to finish 13th by most experts in this conference this year. So you're looking at a team that's right now sitting at the top of this conference and is overachieving by like a dozen spots. So it's probably time we do start to give them their flowers. So you mentioned the talent that Utah has lost over the last couple of years, right? They've put a couple of guys on offense into the NFL. Kincaid is probably the most high profile, but he's not the only guy. The offensive side of the ball, they've had a couple of running backs. They had the two-way linebacker running back. His name's eluding me now. It's like
he's in Detroit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know you're talking about.
It's a very, very Samoan name, and I cannot think of what it is, and I don't want to murder it, but they've put some offensive people in the NFL. Who on this team this year, even like a Cam Rising, I don't know if he would have been an NFL quarterback, even if he was healthy. He just feels like a very much college quarterback. And we've talked a lot about the difference between like a perfect college quarterback versus an NFL quarterback, Diego Pavia being a very prime example of that. Who on this offensive side of the ball, outside of maybe the offensive linemen, because they do churn out offensive linemen there in Utah, but is Micah Bernard an NFL running back? Maybe, right? Like a mid to late round guy, but not a stud that's going to go to the NFL. Pass catchers, it doesn't seem like they've got a lot. Maybe there's somebody who breaks out in the next year or two, but like that, I think, is another huge deficiency for them when you look at a guy like Isaac Wilson, who is a true freshman, highly touted freshman. But you really, when you have to start a freshman in college, you're looking at a team. You want those seniors on the outside, those playmakers. You want a running back that's going to be able to take the pressure off of them, and it just doesn't feel like that's what they've got in Utah. And we saw it this weekend, even with Cam Rising playing, they just could not get the offense going against a very bad Arizona State team, right? Like Arizona State's not going to fool anybody into believing they're good, but as you mentioned in your headline there, Scadaboo had a great game. He's a man behind his pads.
Yeah.
But again, like that Arizona State roster is not very good.
No, they're not the most talented, certainly, but Friday night game,
right,
in Tempe, the whole crowd's behind you.
Yep.
They're fired up.
First night of the weekend, they're getting juiced up.
Yeah, well, they start their weekends on like Wednesday at
lunchtime. Actually, being at Arizona State, yeah, that's
very I mean they just live on the weekend there. It's crazy.
Still the number one party school in the nation.
Yeah, I mean, no wonder James Harden went there, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, I don't think this Utah team is laden with NFL talent, but you mentioned Pavia, like that Vandy team is not laden with NFL talent either. It just so happens when you have a guy who's incredible in college, you can do wonderful things, and they have an awesome coaching staff. Like I don't think Utah's going to be bad going forward. I just don't think they're going to compete for the Big 12 title at this point.
Yep, I think we're on the same page there. All right, well, let's shift over to we sold on South Carolina a week too soon, huh? They had some legitimate chances to win this game, and I know it's not easy to revisit that when you've had opportunities and you kind of you made a mistake here or a mistake there, but South Carolina was very game against an Alabama team that we both clearly, laying 21 points, we both clearly thought Vandy was a wake-up call and this team was going to come out ready to play. You go into T-Town and you nearly knock them off and give them a second consecutive loss. That's a good weekend, and those freshmen look good. I know there's no moral victories in football. All right, I'm gonna preface my next statement by saying that there are no moral victories in football. However, South Carolina, if they keep this coaching staff together and they can avoid losing some of those star freshmen in the transfer portal, that team is primed to be pretty scary going forward. You talk about the pass rush they've got. I think Sellers looks like he could be an actual, like a very good college quarterback. You got to get another playmaker or two on offense, and I think South Carolina could make some real noise next year and the following year. However, you played Bama really, really tough this weekend, man. You had Milroe kind of off his game almost the whole game. That pass rush was getting home. You guys put it to the defense a little bit too at times throughout this game. I know there's no moral victories, man, but talk to me. Talk positively about this weekend, right?
I've said this to multiple people. I'm pretty sure I said it to you. I said it on the show last week. Every single time that number 8 for South Carolina steps on the field, he's the best athlete in the game. And we threw it to him twice deep, and good things happen.
Yep.
Talk about Nick Harper, obviously, for those of y'all who are new here. We threw a deep out route, and he drew a defensive pass interference, automatic first down, and the touchdown catch. Which, by the way, what was that? Yeah, what was that referee looking at? Like, he's standing on the goal line. Everyone saw his foot was in bounds.
Usually, like if it's because he didn't have control, they'll do the whole juggling thing. He didn't do that. He just said, Nope, out of bounds.
It's a great catch. Phenomenal catch. Awesome throw. Like, good things happen when you throw it to your best playmakers. And he very clearly, when given the opportunity, can be one of our best playmakers, right?
Yep.
Defense was phenomenal. Forced turnovers, forced punts. Our offense is not great. we lack explosive playmakers, like you said. Yep. We have some help coming in next year. We have, I believe, a 5-star, 2 4-stars, and a 3-star coming in at receiver, including Lenore Sellers' brother. Maybe 3 4-stars. I have to double check. But we have some help coming there. I never thought that I would say that a special teams issue is the problem when Shane Beamer is my head coach. But we are, yeah, right? That's, yeah. We can't kick.
Yeah.
After 4 years of the most accurate kicker in college football in Mitch Jeter, who's now playing for Michigan, we have a 5th-year senior who had never attempted a field goal in a game kicking for us. And we are now a missed kick away from overtime at home versus LSU and a missed field goal away from beating Alabama on the road. Also, Sellers missed a wide-open receiver on the 2-point conversion at the end, but yeah, whatever. I mean, that true freshman on the road, I'll give him a pass for that. That's fine. I mean, it sucks. You got to make that play, but, like, I get it. They're just kids. Same goes for kickers, but, like, this kind of felt like I went back and looked. I wrote it down, but I did it at work, so I don't have it in front of me anymore. The Penn State USC game, or Penn State Southern Cal game, Southern Cal missed a kick in that game, lost by 3. Ole Miss missed a kick, lost by 3. Who else was it? Oh, Colorado had missed kick. They lost by 3. Purdue, they also missed a field goal and then went for 2 in overtime, and they lost their game. Like, South Carolina obviously missed the kick, lost their game by 2. Like, it was the week. I know we say it every week, college kickers, whatever.
Best
but like
taxes and college kickers.
Exactly. But this week it felt a little bit more impactful in the actual outcome of games because of the timing of some of these missed kicks. And that's something that's a fixable issue, right? Like especially for a Beamer to not have a kicker is crazy. I mean, the existence is pain as a South Carolina fan, but credit to Alabama, rallying in that game, their defense kind of standing on its head there on the 2-point. They did flush Sellers out. I still believe in this Alabama team. I still think they're very good. Jalen Milroe is a better quarterback than he has played the last 2 weeks. Kalen DeBoer, I've said it over and over and over again. He's a very, very good coach. He's going to win a lot of games at Alabama. It's the first year in that system. They will win plenty of games. I promise you. I'm not ready to quit on Alabama yet.
Yeah.
Don't know what to make of South Carolina. I don't.
For sure. Clemson handles business against Wake Forest. Not a whole lot there. It started slow, and you thought maybe Clemson's offense was kind of coming back to earth, but they get it going against Wake Forest and cover by the hook. I believe that was a 28-7 game, if I recall correctly. Mizzou smashes UMass as expected. 27.5 wasn't even close. I think they ended up winning by 42. Texas, Oklahoma, let's talk about it. Red River rivalry, one of the big games. We talked about October 12th to start the season. We talked about the weekend coming up. It was a great weekend. Probably why we had a bunch in the red for our picks. But Texas goes in and handles business against Oklahoma. Neutral site, so obviously they didn't go into Stillwater or Norman and knock off Oklahoma. But they made Oklahoma look like they shouldn't be on the same field, right?
Yep.
At times in this game, it felt like Oklahoma might have to blow this thing up because they've got a lot of problems at quarterback. The defense was supposed to be better this year. It had looked better at times this year. They really didn't have anything for Texas offense. Quinn Ewers was rusty early, and Oklahoma had an opportunity. He had the one turnover early. Oklahoma had an opportunity to do something with it and didn't. And then Texas got their feet under them and really just kind of ran away from Oklahoma. Is this more about Texas just being this good, or is Oklahoma kind of fool's gold coming into this game? Maybe a little bit of both. Talk to me.
Yeah, coming out of this weekend, I have to believe that obviously the rankings reflect this, but I think most of the country believes Texas is the best team in the nation, right? It's probably them and Oregon, and if you want to include Ohio State, I still do. I'm still confident in Ohio State winning a title, but yeah, it was how good Texas is, and it was how injured Oklahoma was, right? Yeah. Down your top 5 wide receivers, you're starting your true freshman at quarterback, you're down like 3 offensive linemen. I mean, the Oklahoma defense was good for like the first quarter and a half, but you know, we say it all the time, and especially in the NFL, like we're saying about Cleveland right now, right? That defense, when they have no hope, you get a stop, and it's like, well, we're gonna have to go back out in 3 plays. You know, I think Brent Venables is a good coach. He was obviously fantastic as a defensive coordinator at Clemson. Like, I have no reason to think that he won't be a successful coach at Oklahoma. These freak injuries that they get or have gotten this year, like, are really what's setting him back, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, and that's fair. And I guess you kind of understand the 3 points, especially for Oklahoma in terms of only scoring 3, but also defensively, that's a good point, right? Kind of the wheels just fall off. I know I have talked about it a lot. You mentioned the NFL, talked about it a lot in years past for like Washington's defense, right? They play great for a quarter and a half, and then you realize like, the offense is still fucking inept. Eric Bieniemy can't call a fucking a 3-play series to save his life. Just kind of give up, right? You kind of fall victim to that. So certainly could have been a lot of that as well. But Texas, once they got their feet under them, it looked like they were justifiably the best team in the country for sure. Penn State, you mentioned this game just a little bit ago. Penn State doesn't cover because they win by a field goal in overtime. But Southern Cal, college kickers, you get the ball first in overtime. You end up having to settle for a field goal attempt and you miss. Penn State sets up they've got a pretty good kicker themselves. They set up for a pretty easy middle of the field kick, and they knock down their field goal, win 33-30. I think the big thing from this, man, is Southern Cal had a 14-point lead pretty late in this game, and you saw Drew Aller they kind of took the reins off of the offense. And things picked up. Business picked up for Penn State on offense. So I've said this several times throughout the year that this is the most talented Penn State roster that James Franklin has had, in my opinion. I believe that wholeheartedly, that this is across the entire roster the most talent he's had there in Happy Valley. they still every week it seems like they just want Drew Aller, who I think could be a very good college quarterback, and he's got prototypical size and stuff. They're just seem like they refuse to let him throw the ball. Do you have any inkling from this game that this might be a situation where they stop and think and realize, like, maybe we got something there, maybe we need to open the offense up a little more? Or do you think they got the win and we're going to see them go right back to James Franklin 3 yards in a cloud of dust, and we're going to hope we can play defense, offense?
Well, luckily for me, who has to answer this question, they play Wisconsin next week, so I don't think it really matters what style offense they play. But history tells us that James Franklin does what James Franklin knows, and he knows safe football, right? Drew Aller looked really good, right? He completed 30 passes. 17 of them went to one receiver.
Yeah.
So, like, I get that he was letting it fly, but he was letting it fly in one direction, and it was to a tight end. So it's not like he's out here slinging it outside the numbers. True. I agree with you that Drew Aller looks incredibly. He has all the measurables you would want: the size, the speed, the arm talent, whatever. Right? Maybe he'll be good in the NFL. I don't know, but he is handicapped by this James Franklin offense, which is unfortunate. I mean, I talked about it last year when his yards per attempt had gone down every single week for like 6 weeks in a row, leading to that to the Michigan game where they just got the doors run off of them in the second half, right?
34 straight handoffs.
Yeah, like, that's a recipe for disaster. But this year specifically, I think that Drew Aller has played much better inside of that offensive scheme that James Franklin has called for him. I have to imagine that they just go back to what we know, right? Like that's the James Franklin offense. That's what they're going to run. If they can continue to get 17 catches and 224 yards out of their tight end, maybe they'll look really good. I don't know. Drew Aller threw 3 picks. Like it wasn't the best game he played, right? But it certainly wasn't the worst. He played enough to bring him back from a 14-point halftime deficit and a 7-point game late in the fourth. Like, and then that defense stepped up and Miller Moss threw a pick on what ended up being their last possession of regulation. I mean, the Penn State team is very good. I agree with you. Probably the most talented they've had, including the Saquon team, and then Miles Sanders after him. But it's still James Franklin, man. It's still James Franklin.
Still James Franklin. Yeah. One note on that, Miller Moss, he's so limited. He's so limited. And that is very surprising with Lincoln Riley and the quarterbacks he's coached and recruited. Transfer portal guys, you talk about like Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield. You talk about bringing Caleb Williams with him to Southern Cal after recruiting him to Oklahoma. He's worked with some of the best quarterbacks. Like you go back to when he was an offensive coordinator. He's worked with some great quarterbacks. To have Miller Moss be your quarterback at Southern Cal feels like a huge disservice to the quarterback position at a pretty storied institution when it comes to that position. So it's very weird. Miller Moss is so very limited. He's not very quick in terms of his decision making with the ball either. And you can't blame it on weapons because they've got some pretty fucking talented guys on that offensive side of the ball that they should be able to overcome some of those shortcomings. He just seems like he's just that limited that they can't. On the other side though, with Penn State, it's what's his Tyler Warren, the tight end. Yep. You mentioned that he lines up fucking everywhere.
Yeah.
So Drew Aller wasn't just throwing to like a tight. That dude is nuts, dude. He lines up a wide receiver, lines up a running back. He threw a touchdown to him when he was the long snapper on a trick play and shit. Like just unbelievable what that guy can do. And I was talking to a buddy of mine this weekend in terms of the versatility. I don't know if this will hit home for you, but he reminds me of what Chris Cooley was coming to Washington and what he was in college, because he did a lot of that. And even when Joe Gibbs drafted Chris Cooley, he said, like, we don't know what position he's going to play, but this guy's a football player. And he ended up playing like H-back, but was technically listed at tight end, and he would line up in the backfield all the time. Great blocker, good with the ball, can line up everywhere. Cooley didn't necessarily line up at wide receiver a whole lot. A little bit in college, but he was never going to be that guy in the NFL. This guy's crazy. Like Tyler Warren is like a Swiss Army knife on the offensive side of the ball there. It's pretty neat to see the way they do move him around a ton. Very good blocker in the run game as well. But it is and he can throw the fucking ball. Like he's such just an athlete. It's crazy.
He's from Virginia, so it's to be expected that he's a stud.
Absolutely.
But,
absolutely.
Whatever. Chris Cooley also used to catch passes after he'd slam his hand through drywall. So that was, shout out those old NFL commercials, some of the best ever.
Those were some pretty cool commercials for sure.
He was 44, right? Didn't Cooley
47? Cooley
47. Yeah.
Close though. Yeah, almost the same jersey number.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Let's see. Stanford, Notre Dame. We were both on Stanford on this, and they never showed up.
Nope.
Notre Dame got it going early. Stanford scored a touchdown, and I was like, all right, maybe we'll be able to stem this thing and hold this big spread that we have. No, they ended up getting dump trucked 49-7, I think was the final score. So
yeah, kind of a get right game for Notre Dame there.
Yeah. If it wasn't Stanford, I would say like, if Notre Dame's offense can just play this well the rest of the season, but it was Stanford. Cal Pitt ends up winning, but man, they had to hold on late. They ended up winning 17-15, that oddball score. Cal is feisty, man. They played Miami tough. I picked Cal because I thought this was going to be a letdown game for Cal. Or I picked Pitt, to cover because I thought it was going to be a letdown game for Cal coming across the country after that emotional letdown game against Miami. They played tough, and maybe Cal is going to be the team that touches the Pacific Ocean that makes the transition most quickly into the Atlantic Coast Conference.
I mean, it's possible. It's all the same water, like it connects,
right.
So it makes sense.
Right.
If you walk about 500 feet that way, you'll be into the water. But this was another game, another missed field goal late in the fourth quarter. A 40-yarder. Cal just banged it, and that puts them ahead. Pitt didn't score after that. They punted, and then they kneeled down. But I agree. I thought it would be a letdown spot for Cal after that emotional loss, that blowing the lead to Miami. But you mentioned it, man. They fought hard in this game, and they were in it all the way through the end. But Pitt's just better. It may have been a look ahead spot for Pitt. They have a bye this week, but for the reasons that you brought up, and I agree with you, kind of an emotional game last week for Cal coming east. Maybe Pitt thought they could kind of sleepwalk through it and get ready for the bye week, but that wasn't the case. So shout out to Cal.
Yeah,
cost us a gambling victory here, but whatever.
Yeah. Pitt. I mean, you want to talk look ahead? Pitt does have a rivalry game coming up after the bye week, though. So Eli Holstein didn't look very good in this game. 2 picks, no tugs. I expected more from him. I think if he'd had a better game, Pitt might have covered pretty easily here. But he had a bad game. That Cal defense is better. I think my kind of introduction to them was the Miami game. Really, the way they were confusing Cam Ward pretty early in that game. He got it going late. Obviously, they end up coming back and winning, but they played pretty well this weekend. Confused Eli Holstein most of this game, threw a couple picks. He'd been playing really well so far this season. So shout out Cal, man. You keep competing in the Atlantic Coast Conference.
The same water, Gary.
I know.
The same water.
Purdue, Illinois, and oh boy, what a hold on win for Illinois. They were up so big, and then they had to come back late. They lost the lead to Purdue, had to come back and kick a field goal to go to overtime. And we get into overtime, and Purdue ends up going for 2. Just didn't get it. And 50-49. An Illinois-Purdue game went 50-49. But what a crazy, just topsy-turvy game this was. Altmaier looks like he's here to stay. This Illinois team, I don't think is going to go away. I don't think they're going to make noise in terms of chasing a Big Ten title or chasing a playoff spot as a Big Ten team. But I think a finish in the top 4 or 5 of the Big Ten is a realistic finish for them. But man, they really had to hold on to this one against Purdue. It got real messy for them in the second half.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I kind of all year long, I've told people that what Illinois likes to do is drag teams down and then let Altmaier make a play. Who, by the way, Altmaier's from Starkville, Mississippi. Like,
Yeah.
looking at the team in Starkville, how do you let Altmaier get away from you there? I don't really understand that, but all right. Yeah, I mean, this was just an incredible game up and down, and it kind of got lost in the wash because it was in that afternoon slate, right? So everybody's watching the Red River, but this was a much more competitive game and entertaining than was the Texas Oklahoma game. Excuse me, another missed field goal in this game. I'm curious of your opinion here. Going for 2 in overtime as Purdue, so they got the 2-point conversion on the field goal or on the touchdown they scored with 46 seconds left in the game to tie, right? Or to
go up 3.
To go up 3. Yes, exactly. So the first one, I agree, correct. You have to go for it there because that's your only chance, really, to like force an actual
extra point. Does you no good.
Exactly. Do you agree with going for 2 in overtime as a 1-4 team?
100%. 100% of the time. If I'm in that situation, I'm Purdue, I go for 2 100% of the time. I'm the road team. I'm the dog. I'm not supposed to be in this game. Illinois is a ranked opponent, conference game, on the road. 100% of the time, I'm going for 2 there, for sure. I would do it at the end of regulation if I scored a touchdown to be down 1, right? I would do it 100% of the time. I support that decision. There are a lot of other situations where I wouldn't, but that particular situation, on the road, the dog, I'm unranked, they're ranked, we're not having a great season, they're chasing a really good season, I'm 100% always going to go for that.
Yeah, I think I agree. I agree. You're having a tough year, but your offense has been incredible all day long.
Yeah.
You've moved the ball. You've already gotten 1 2-point. I think I agree. You go for it. You go for the win. Yeah. I think it's the right call.
All right. Arizona, BYU. Typo over there. I just noticed that. But anyway, Arizona, BYU, and we talked a little bit about BYU at the top when we were talking about Utah and their struggles. They kind of look like the real deal, and I'm not sure what's going on with Arizona. We expected that offense would be fine, but it's kind of clear they missed Jed Fish. But BYU, they look. We may be talking about them at the end of the season as Big 12 champions. It's time to get on board with that. I know we've been kind of holding out, waiting for Utah to be the team, and waiting for them to kind of right the ship and figure things out. Cam Rising comes back, and they still can't get it going. Is this BYU team for real?
Yeah, 100%. They played very, very well. They're leading the Big 12 for a reason, right? They're playing incredible ball, playing big boy football, going into stadiums and just manhandling other teams. I think they're legit. They're going to be a force to be reckoned with down the stretch in the Big 12. So credit to them. They're playing super well. I'm excited to keep going there in Provo. It's always fun to have a Utah team in the mix.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, Dad, thanks for joining. Yeah, and I'll tell you what, the pregame that they had with Jake Retzlaff, he's so BYU, historic Mormon university, named after one of the founders of the religion. Utah, a very Mormon-heavy state. They have a quarterback who is actually of Jewish faith, and they had a little fun with it pregame, talking about how he calls himself the BY Jew or whatever, and that they were having a little fun with kind of his difference. You know, a lot of those folks that do follow the faith that go to these universities, they often lose a year of competition. They don't necessarily lose a year of eligibility, but they lose a year of competition because they have to go on and now the word's eluding me, but it's a religious thing they have to do for like a year where they go on mission. That's what it is. They go on mission. And so he was talking a lot about kind of how that is and how he's embracing the differences, and it's a different kind of exposure for a university that's historically been pretty strictly of Mormon faith. In fact, they potentially cost themselves a Final Four run when they had a basketball player who was a star for them. I forget his name, but was a star for them. It had violated some of the rules of the school. So it is interesting to see some of that exposure, but they had a lot of fun with it pregame. So that was pretty neat. And he's legitimate dual threat guy, 200 yards passing and had 6 carries for about 5 yards a carry during the game as well. Mississippi State, Georgia, and you were on this one, Bentley. You had Mississippi State. I had Georgia. I just thought Georgia the week prior had looked decent in terms of their offense, and of course in the Bama game they had gotten things going, but I don't know what happened here. Mississippi State, I feel like is the worst team in the SEC. Maybe I bought Georgia when I shouldn't have. We don't love Carson Beck. Don't necessarily love their playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. I just thought this pick for me was more about Mississippi State than it was Georgia. But Mississippi State played them tough. Georgia only won by 10. They were really at risk for most of this game. Mississippi State had kind of kept them within arm's reach for the most part. But Georgia escapes against a very game Mississippi State team that hadn't had a great season up to that point. Tennessee, Florida. Tennessee ends up escaping, getting the win. Big rivalry game against Florida. Maybe we should have kind of seen this coming in terms of Florida playing a much better game, being a rivalry game. But Tennessee had been kind of on a different trajectory than Florida this year. Florida's kind of at risk of potentially even firing their head coach. I don't know if they're ever going to actually pull the trigger, but we talked about it a few weeks ago that they had done some inquiry into potentially buying out Billy Napier. But they go in to Knoxville and really kind of bullied Tennessee for large parts of this game. Tennessee's very fortunate to escape. Question for you.
Yes.
In terms of Tennessee, are we reaching a point that Nico might be in bust territory?
No.
Not yet?
It's too early.
Okay.
Too early. They still only have the one loss.
Yeah.
They'll be fine.
Okay. All right.
The Josh Heupel offense, it's not the most beginner-friendly offense, right? It's an up-tempo. They're throwing the ball wide a lot. I had the discussion, I guess I should say, Nico is a very good passer. He's not necessarily a great quarterback.
Okay.
That will come with time, right? You can teach someone how to be a quarterback rather than you can teach passing ability. Sure. You know what I'm saying? Sure. And he has the body. He has the athletic ability. I would say maybe he should play a little more football and a little less volleyball, but regardless, I think that he'll be fine. Josh Heupel has proven himself to be a good coach. I mean, they were a good team with Joe Milton playing quarterback there. And, like, if you can be a good team with Joe Milton, I figure you can probably do it with most anybody.
That's
so fair. They obviously have some flaws. They're not at the stage at this moment. They're not a great team. No. I don't know what the answer is, but I think they'll be fine going forward.
Yeah, I watched this weekend and saw a lot of times, and maybe it was Florida just getting up for a rivalry game. We have to remember Florida is one of the premier SEC programs. They've clearly, every year they're going to have athletes. They're in the state of Florida, but it just seemed like Nico was very much a deer in headlights for a good majority of this game. And I do worry, as you mentioned, right? He's a very good passer of the football. It's quick when he gets his feet set, everything's on time. The offense is in rhythm. He looks very, very competent. He can sling it. He can run. He can move the chains. But when things aren't clean, he does just look like he's just kind of lost. And that may just come with time. You mentioned it. Heupel's offense is not exactly a very vanilla kind of straightforward offense. They do there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of route concepts. He runs a lot of pro route concepts at a very high tempo. Yeah. So I think that probably has a lot to do with it. So maybe it's not time to jump off the Nico train just yet. All right, the game of the week here, and it fucking delivered, man. It fucking delivered. Ohio State against Oregon, and I know I owe Oregon an apology because we'd been talking about it so far this year that like when are the explosive plays going to come? When are the explosive plays going to come? They've got so many athletes on that side of the ball. When is it going to come? When is it going to come? Well, it came at the right time because it came against the number 2 team in the country, a team that's loaded. They have 4 NFL defensive backs that play in rotation for them. They have like 7 NFL defensive linemen that play in rotation for them. And Dylan Gabriel carved them up. And they lost their number 2 wide receiver early in the game when he spit in the face of the defender. I don't know what the fuck he's doing, but I thought at that time it was like, man, that's a real emotional swing. And then it wasn't because Oregon just stayed steady. Dan Lanning, it's clear he was a very much calming factor for them. It helped that they were at home. Autzen Stadium is a fucking awesome environment. And Dylan Gabriel, dude, he just was poised. There wasn't much pressure. That offensive line handled those NFL defensive linemen very, very well. I think they sacked him once, and he hadn't been sacked once coming into that game. And that offensive line is the real deal. He's also very quick with the ball, so that helps the offensive line. He hadn't been pushing the ball down the field too much, but he pushed the ball down the field quite a bit against this Ohio State team. Tez Johnson broke out in the second half, which was a big difference maker for them. Great game by Oregon. Great game overall. My big takeaway from this is I don't think Ohio State can win a national championship with Will Howard at quarterback. I think we saw this weekend that Will Howard is a guy that does have some of the raw characteristics that you want in a college quarterback, especially because he's very athletic and can be a dual threat guy. But he is limited in terms of his ability to really take charge of an offense and be the centerpiece of the offense. Oregon took away some of the things that they really wanted to do. Early in the game, the running game was working very well. Once it became a bit of a shootout in the second half, I felt that Ohio State was very much on their back foot because of Will Howard, despite having maybe the best wide receiver in history, if you listen to what people say about J.J. Smith and Ibuka and all the other weapons that they've got. That offense felt at times very disjointed, very discombobulated. And I kept watching and thinking like, man, Will Howard doesn't seem comfortable, doesn't seem like he's ready to push the ball down the field. I'll get off my soapbox now. Those were my takeaways from the game. Hell of a game. I want to hear your takeaways from it.
So I'm going to say something that I criticized Georgia fans for a few weeks ago after the loss to Alabama. But I'm allowed to say it because I'm not an Ohio State fan. I actually strongly dislike Ohio State. I feel pretty good about Ohio State after this loss.
Yeah.
Nothing in that game that I saw led me to believe that they can't win a national title. I understand that what Roger's saying. I agree with you. He might not even be the best quarterback they have on the roster. He's certainly not the most talented quarterback they have on the roster. But keep in mind, their one incredible 12-man penalty called by Dan Lanning away from having like another 7 seconds on that clock.
Yep.
And a boneheaded OPI call against J.J. Smith that forced them to be backed up 15 yards. So they were in position, right? They were further back in position to kick the field goal at the end of the game. Like, credit to Oregon. We watched that late game, was week 2 or week 3 against Boise State and Ashton Jeanty, when I get that Ashton Jeanty is putting up Barry Sanders' number, but he ran all over that fucking Oregon defense, right?
They needed 2 special teams touchdowns to beat Boise State.
Yep. And you see, we've talked about all year long, the running back stable they have in Ohio State with Trevion Henderson and the guy they brought up from Ole Miss, whose name is now escaping me. The other running back, Trevion Henderson, and somebody else. Oh my God, I have
that too. What the hell?
Quinshon Judkins.
Judkins,
yeah, with the split hair. Yeah. So they have, granted, neither of those guys are Ashton Jeanty. Got it. But they're stud running backs. Like they're they're incredibly good, right? So credit to Oregon for fixing that run defense. Being able to cover well enough, right, against that vaunted receiver room at Ohio State. So Did either team really control the line of scrimmage? Not really. Like, it was the line of scrimmage was kind of a wash. It was just a very, very well played game by both teams, but Oregon played better, right? They had more explosives than did Ohio State, which is something I brought up a couple of weeks ago, is that Ohio State kind of lives and dies by the explosives in that offense, right? But they have the guys that they can do that, Yeah. They have the home run hitters. They have 4 home run hitters basically on this team, 2 receivers, 2 running backs that can score from anywhere on the field, and they just have to get them the ball in those positions, right? Now, we see in a game like this, maybe they could have used some longer drives, tire out the Oregon defense a little bit, but that's just not really the offense that they're running, And if Chip Kelly back in the day relied on explosives a lot, like that. His teams hit home runs because he always had the fastest guys on the field when he was coaching at Oregon. So he's replicated that essentially here at Ohio State, and maybe that will come back to bite them later on down the road. But I have to also imagine that like he will make adjustments based off of this game, and Will Howard will be better running that offense when we get to December than he is in the middle of October. So I credit to Oregon, phenomenal game. They played extremely well. Dan Lanning is a hell of a football coach, but like I still don't feel bad about my pick of Ohio State to win a national title. We're probably going to get this game again in Indianapolis.
Oh yeah.
Like I still feel pretty good about Ohio State.
Might get it again in like the Citrus Bowl too.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, for sure. And I agree with you that I don't know that I feel worse about Ohio State today, but I also I do believe that you're going to need to see that growth from Will Howard in this offense by December, or we may get a similar result against Oregon. And I just don't know that Ohio State's going to be able to get over the hump against an Oregon and maybe a Texas, right? They may end up being the 3rd best team in the country, and they might lose to the 2nd best team in the country twice and have to deal with Texas as well, potentially. I saw at times this weekend, it just looked like he was kind of out of his element with the things that Oregon was doing. And when the plays weren't coming easily, Will Howard isn't a guy that I look at and say, he's going to get you out of bad plays. He wasn't that at Kansas State either. At Kansas State, it was, I take the quick read or I'm running. And he was able to out-athlete a lot of defenses in the Big 12 because it's the Big 12 and nobody's got defense in the Big 12 outside of Utah, right? So you look at in the Big 10, you can't necessarily do that. And I wonder against Michigan, is Michigan going to be able to stifle this offense? Now, I don't know that Michigan's going to be able to score 7 points to beat them, even if they hold them to 6, right? So I just look at it when you're talking about Ohio State, you're talking about Big 10 championship, likely playing Oregon again. You're talking about playoffs, and you're looking at like national semifinal and farther, right? That's what Ohio State's trajectory is this year. And Will Howard's going to have to get more comfortable in the Chip Kelly offense for this Ohio State team to realize that potential of being that national champion.
They do have, so Ohio State, they have, what's his name? Julian Sayin.
The guy that left Alabama.
Yeah, Julian Sayin.
I thought he might win the job this year.
So did I. I think he was going to be the quarterback if they didn't get a transfer in.
Yeah.
Do you think, barring injury, of course, there's any chance we see Julian Sayin play in this for Ohio State? Because this was the game. Well, they have to go to Penn State. Like they're not going to play him. They get a bye this week. Yeah, they get a bye this week. Then they home Nebraska. Then they go to Penn State, and they finish with Indiana and Michigan. If I don't know if either of those teams are going to be great at the end of the year, but like. I don't imagine Julian Sayin plays. I'm just curious if you think that we might see him.
The only way I see it is if they struggle at Penn State. If we go into half at Penn State and Penn State's up like 13-3 or something, we might see Julian Sayin in the second half. If they go and lose to Penn State, we might see Julian Sayin start coming out of that because I forget who they play after Penn State, but it's kind of a layup game.
It's, Purdue. At Northwestern, home Indiana, home Michigan.
Right. So week 11, if they end up losing to Penn State, you might see him start against Purdue, and we'll see how the rest of the season goes. Because I think Ohio State's just going to outclass Purdue, right? So that might be a good week for them to give him the reins. If they go and lose to Penn State, it all really depends on that. I think Will Howard won the job because he's a vet too. I don't know that it necessarily was like we think Will Howard is that much better than a Julian Sayin. I think it's Ryan Day is coaching for his job, and he knows it, and he has to beat Michigan this year, and probably has to at least play in the national championship game this year to save his job. So I think it was very much Will Howard is a vet. We're going with him versus going with Julian Sayin, who it seems like you and I are in lockstep that we thought he was going to be the starter at Ohio State when they lost out in the Cam Ward sweepstakes. I thought Cam Ward was going to Ohio State and he was just going to be the guy there. But when they lost that and ended up with Will Howard, I still thought Julian Sayin would beat him out for the job. I was actually surprised to see that Will Howard was announced as a starter. But barring a loss to Penn State, I don't think we're going to see Julian Sayin this year for Ohio State, other than in like garbage time snaps. All right. Well, moving on. Big, not necessarily big in terms of the spread here, but LSU with a big upset over Ole Miss. They tear the fucking goalpost down, though. That was kind of weird. I have a question for you. If this LSU team is coached by Nick Saban or Les Miles, are the students storming the field beating fucking Ole Miss?
Not Nick Saban. Les Miles, maybe.
Maybe Les Miles. Okay.
Not Nick. I mean, it's a big win. Saturday night win.
You're fucking LSU and you're storming the fucking field against Ole Miss, though?
It's an upset.
Okay.
I mean, hey, as someone who watched my most valuable college basketball player get injured during a court storming last year, I am all in favor of storming courts and storming fields. I think it's awesome. That you're in school for 4 years. That's a core memory. Like, that I've never experienced one. I'm very jealous of all the kids that get to do it. I would never been involved in storming of any sort. And I was at the South Carolina versus Alabama game in 2010 where we beat number 1 Alabama. I couldn't afford the seats low enough to be close enough to storm the field.
Get onto the field.
Yeah, that if I ever see a number 1 team lose, I promise I will be close enough to the field to storm the field at that point in time. Things have changed in
different demographics
years.
now.
Yeah. But fuck it, storm the field, man. Why not?
Okay.
Have a good time. Enjoy it. Who knows? It's a Brian Kelly coach team. Who knows if they'll win another game?
Those are all fair points. It was just weird. It's just like you're LSU and you're storming the field because you beat Ole Miss, and I don't know. I get it. Listen, I'm all for college kids having fun, for sure. I'm just being a curmudgeon about it because you're fucking LSU, right? Like,
yeah.
But I will say this: the Nick Saban LSU teams weren't an underdog against Ole Miss either. So
that's true. No Nick Saban team would be an underdog to Lane Kiffin. That's a good point.
But bad loss for Ole Miss. You talked about it. Kickers, college kickers, they didn't really do a good job of capitalizing the opportunities they had during the game either. Jackson Dart didn't look crisp. They came out looking okay early, but it got to be a slog kind of middle of the game. Lane Kiffin has kind of this reputation, though, doesn't he? Like, he just seems like in these games where you start to believe or you start to feel like Ole Miss should be the team to kind of take the next step. They lose to Kentucky, and they follow that up with a bad, I know it was a road game, but like you're a 3.5-point favorite on the road in the SEC. You should probably win that game. And they lose this game too. And I know they sandwiched a win against South Carolina in there. I wasn't going to mention it really too heavily, but like this is a bad loss in my opinion. And it feels like this is kind of like just when we start to believe in Lane Kiffin, they go and lay one of these eggs and they just can't get over the hump.
Yeah. I very famously early this season said I was not going to bet against Ole Miss. Well, my tune has changed. It's your James Franklin thing. It's like they're just back to who we thought they were, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I would like to call attention to the fact that Juice Wells has 17 catches on the season.
Yeah.
Y'all have fun with that. Ole Miss. Hope you guys enjoyed the Juice Wells experience down in Oxford. He's a different quarterback when Spencer Rattler's not throwing him the ball. Hope you enjoy writing those NIL checks for him. I do think it is kind of strange though that Trey Harris goes out of this game and their offense looks inept, which is similar to what happened against South Carolina last weekend.
Yeah.
Is Jackson Dart just a Trey Harris merchant?
Maybe. That or Lane Kiffin just draws up all these plays for Trey Harris as kind of look number one. And Trey Harris is good, right? Like, let's not kid ourselves about who Trey Harris is, but maybe that's all it is. It's like he's first read, and if he's winning on the route, Jackson's throwing the ball.
Yeah.
It's not a bad proposition, but yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, that offense is very, very different without him, man.
Yeah, he's got 59 catches in the year. Like,
oh my God.
Their next closest guy has 27. Like, it's night and day, this offense.
He could miss like 3 weeks and still be the leading receiver on that team.
Yeah. 100%. Also, shout out Garrett Nussmeier. I know his stat line does not look incredible in this game, but that man battled his ass off. His ass off, and he made the biggest throws when it mattered, including in overtime.
Yep, absolutely.
Future New York Giants quarterback Garrett Nussmeier.
I hope so, because he's not an NFL quarterback. I'd love if they replaced. I don't know. Do you think so?
I think he's got it.
You think
so? I think he's got it.
Okay.
Whatever it is, I think he's got it.
Okay. There's just something about him.
He's a sleeper come draft time.
Maybe he belongs in New York then, because they win on fucking like magic and unicorn farts every week when they do win, and they play everybody tough. Maybe that's the perfect place for Nussmeier to be. Plus, you got the Malik Neighbors connection there. They had a pretty good bowl game last year when Jaden sat out in the postseason. Yeah. So
I don't know that he's going to be a stud in the NFL, but I think he can play in the NFL.
Okay. All right. Onward and upward. I took back-to-back L's here because I said I was going money line West Virginia and money line Colorado. Colorado did beat the number. West Virginia did not. Iowa State beat the brakes off them. West Virginia looked bad. Garrett Green looked bad after I endorsed him. Pretty terrible. Colorado is an enigma because there were parts of this game where they looked like they couldn't fucking play on the same field as Kansas State. And then you look up in the fourth quarter, and here comes Colorado, and they take a lead with, a minute 46 left, I believe it was. And then the defense just lets them down. Kansas State goes right back down the field and fucking scores. Colorado's got the ball with a chance. They go 4 and out. Just couldn't get the ball back down the field to potentially tie or take the lead. Shedeur Sanders looks like the truth, though. Travis Hunter gets hurt in this game. Unfortunately, it does sound like he might play this week. It was like an AC separation, mild.
Yeah.
But Shedeur Sanders, though, man, like, put him behind a better offensive line, like an NFL offensive line, and give him receivers that are – I mean, I know Jimmy Horn's good, Travis Hunter's good, but, like, put him behind a better offensive line. Is he the best quarterback in next year's draft?
Ooh. That depends. Is his daddy coming with him? And is he bringing his attitude packed up in his Gucci suitcase?
I sure fucking hope not.
Right. I mean,
yeah. That's definitely a factor.
Sure. Obviously, I don't know the kid. This is all outside speculation. He might be an awesome person who, like, is open to coaching. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I have to imagine, though, because Dion has said it, he wants his kids to play somewhere warm. I have to imagine we could see like an Eli drafted by San Diego and they're refusing to go type deal if it's Cleveland with the first pick. I don't know that he's going to be the first pick or whatever, right? But like if he's the first quarterback taken and it's like Carolina, Cleveland.
Carolina's warm.
Yeah, but like David Tepper's still the owner there. I mean, you know, we heard the rumors about Caleb Williams wanting ownership stakes in the Bears, which obviously was not true. But like, if you told me that about Shador, maybe I don't. I want to think that he can be reasonable and can be coached, right? Because he is obviously extremely talented. He's probably the most talented quarterback in this draft. There's so many intangibles that come into play in the NFL that like it's impossible to know for sure, right? We see it every year. It's a crapshoot whether or not the top guys are actually going to be good.
Yeah. Is he Ryan Leaf or is he Peyton Manning? Right? Like,
we won't know for like another 3 years probably.
Right. But that's you mentioned the intangibles, right? That's the eternal equation, right? Because they were drafted 1 and 2. Is he Ryan Leaf, who blew up in the NFL and tried fighting reporters and fighting his teammates, and Junior Seau had to like put him in a headlock? Or is he Peyton Manning, who threw 28 picks as a rookie and still figured out how to be a Hall of Fame quarterback, right? Like those are 2 very distinctly different outcomes, but if he's uncoachable, maybe he is Ryan Leaf, right? Maybe he is, because Ryan Leaf was more talented. When you talk about quarterbacks, Ryan Leaf is maybe one of the most talented quarterbacks we've ever seen on this planet, with the size, the athleticism, the fact that he could throw a strawberry through a battleship, and he was a very accurate passer. He took a pretty bad Washington State team to a Rose Bowl. Like that's a guy who is supremely talented, but as I mentioned a moment ago, he flamed out in the NFL because he was a really, really bad character.
Speaking of reporters trying to fight their quarterbacks, I guarantee you, if Ryan Leaf had played for the Cowboys, Jerry Jones would have gotten that reporter fired.
Excellent reference. Excellent reference. Jerry, woo, he's taking some strays, but he's throwing a tantrum.
Old Jerry.
Oh man, love to see it though.
Oh yeah.
And then we finished the weekend up with Boise and Hawaii. Boise, it was slow going, but we've talked about this, right? That trip down to Pearl Harbor is a mess. Or Honolulu. I think they actually play within the city limits of Honolulu, but Pearl Harbor's right up the road. It's a tough travel. It's not necessarily like a tough environment. Hawaii's not, your raucous college environment, but you're flying, no matter where you fly from. Like you fly from LA, it's still a 6-hour flight. Like it's tough. It's tough. And they're flying from Idaho. You fly in late. You got to get there and get settled. The time zone changes. Even from a West Coast team, the time zone changes. It's tough, but Boise ends up getting it going late, finishes covering by a point here. Ashton Jainty still had 200 yards, like ho-hum, another 200-yard rushing game. I think he had, 2 touchdowns?
He had a receiving touchdown.
That's
so
right.
It was 1 rushing, 1 receiving.
One receiving. So just a ho-hum game for him. But Boise, the one thing I take away from Boise, that defensive line is like legit.
Yeah.
Legit. So you mentioned the Boise-Oregon game. That Oregon offensive line I mentioned, they just don't give up sacks. Dylan Gabriel gets rid of the ball quick, but they're also very good. They had pressured Dylan Gabriel, I believe, 5 times in that game. Mm-hmm. And I think he'd been pressured before this Ohio State game. I think the number was like 7 that he'd been pressured all year, and 5 of them came in the Boise State game. They've got some dogs on that defensive line. And we might be talking about Boise State as the Group of 5 representative. I know
I hope so.
I hope so too. I know there's some teams that are kind of, lurking in terms of being undefeated in small conferences, but I think Boise State has a chance to be the highest rated because that team looks like the real deal, and I want to see Ashton Jainty in the playoffs.
Yeah, they have 29 sacks on the season. That's pretty good.
Pretty fucking good. Pretty good. All right, well, that concludes Week 7's wrap-up. You got anything off the board that we didn't talk about yet that you want to highlight from this past weekend?
Let me double check. Tulane was on a bye, so obviously our
free money this weekend.
Our cash cow did not. They didn't deliver this weekend. I guess I was going to shout them out afterwards, and we'll talk about them here coming into next week's slate. But the service academies continue to roll. continue to do their thing. So shout out to them. They at least Army Navy, they look pretty great. Shout out Vandy. Going to Lexington.
Oh yeah,
getting another conference win.
Big dogs after the Alabama loss, and they go in and upset Kentucky.
Yep. Diego Pavia did turn the ball over for the first time this season.
Yeah.
All season.
He
threw a pick. So I guess shout out to Kentucky for that. Moral victories.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Shout out Vandy, man. Just keep it rolling. Anchor down.
Sure. Yeah, you mentioned the service academies. The wild thing about Army Navy is they're both in a conference now, and they're both in the same conference.
Yep.
So they don't play a conference game technically, because the Army Navy game is separate, and they do not include that on the American Athletic Conference schedule, right?
Yep.
It will never be included as a conference game. So what's very interesting about Army and Navy is that they could both go undefeated in conference and play each other in the conference championship, and then have to play each other again the very following week in the Army Navy game, which is always played the weekend after conference championships. What would be unfortunate, however, is if one of them wins the conference championship game and then they cannibalize each other the next week with the other one winning. You could knock both of the service academies out of the playoff.
Yep.
I think these two teams, honestly, like there's a realistic shot that if the winner of the conference championship game also wins that Army Navy game, that team is going to get into the playoff. I think they have a legitimate shot at playing each other in the conference championship game, because it's a new era, especially at Army. They are fucking slinging the rock all over the place. Ken Niumatalolo, which is surprising, he's no longer at Navy. He was there forever. Legendary coach at Navy. He's out at I think it's San Jose State now, and they're running like an air raid fucking offense out there.
Yeah.
It's like he only did the triple option because he was at Navy, and that's what that's what they wanted at the academy. So Navy continues to run a similar style of offense, but they're blowing the doors off of teams with that offense. So I think there's a legitimate shot we could see the service academies play in the American Championship. And it could be interesting to see kind of how that shakes out with the Army Navy game being the week after. By the way, Army Navy's in Landover this year.
Yeah, yes it is.
Yeah,
yes,
so I may try to sneak some tickets and go to. I've never been to an Army Navy game, despite being in the Navy for 10 years. I never did make it to an Army Navy game. I may try to do it this year. They're right in our backyard.
It's cool. I went to Army Navy at M&T Bank, the Ravens Stadium.
Nice.
That was it's cool. It was cold. It was very, very cold. But it was cool. A lot of fanfare, the flyover, the president was there. It's cool. Unfortunately, Navy has to play Tulane this year.
That's fair.
So
maybe there'll be a favorite. Tulane can cover, but Navy stays undefeated.
Hey, I'd be down for that. That's fine.
Right.
That's
Just
fine.
Keep the covers in play.
Yes, keep the covers in play.
Keep the free money hack going. All right, well, let's shift gears. Let's talk week 8. We have both of those service academies on the slate this week because they are both in the top 25. But we start with Oregon and Purdue, 27.5 points. Purdue coming off what we talked about with Illinois, that kind of knock them out, drag them out, 50-49 overtime game. Oregon coming off the slugfest against Ohio State. I think this is a window where we're going to see a little bit of a letdown from Oregon. 27.5 is a lot. I think Purdue's playing on an emotional high right now. I think this is like a 23-point win. I just think 27 is too many. You have Purdue as well. Similar thought process, or did you pick it for a different reason?
It's Friday night, baby.
It is Friday night. That's right. Friday night, weird shit.
Weird things happen on Friday night.
Oregon might fucking lose outright.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen.
Just kidding. Not that crazy. Not that crazy.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. But, yeah, I mean, both coming off emotional games. One will win, one a loss. Maybe a bounce back for the Boilermakers. They are going blackout Friday night. His uniforms are tough.
Yeah.
I have to imagine Drew Brees will probably be in the house. Yeah, that's too many points. It's a lot of points. 4 touchdowns
on the road too.
Yeah. Friday nights. Give me the underdogs on Friday nights.
Yeah. Speaking of on the road, stat. The team that travels more than two or more time zones this year. So we've got that a lot this year. It's the ACC's got some West Coast teams. Big Ten, they've got West Coast teams. Mountain West, you got teams that are traveling, with Hawaii as far as, a couple of time zones there as well. They are 1-10 this year when traveling 2 time zones for conference games. Penn State beating Southern Cal this weekend is the only win this year traveling. The stat is the number of time zones, and it's like 1-10 or 2-10. I think Penn State's like the only one that's won this year traveling that many time zones.
And honestly, they had to ride on a bus for an hour before they traveled time zones. So
thanks, James Franklin, for giving us that breakdown. I think it's 2-10 because Miami beat Cal as well.
Yeah.
But I think that's whatever the number is, it's a pretty paltry record. Yep. It's not great. It's not great.
Crazy how conference games aren't really meant to be more than 2 time zones across.
Right.
Weird how
they
were like regionally associated at one point in time.
Right. Conference realignment. BYU laying 9 against Oklahoma State. I think we've both kind of come to terms with what Oklahoma State is this year. And we spent quite a bit of time during the Week 7 review talking about how it's probably time to give BYU their flowers. BYU at home against an Oklahoma State team that's been underachieving this year. Possible letdown moment here if they're going to take their foot off the gas, but I don't know that I see that from BYU, so I'm comfortable laying the 9 here.
Yeah, I almost went just because of the Mike Gundy getting headbutted by a cow thing. He's just weird enough to like parlay that into having his team get up for a game like this. I literally just came off saying give me the underdogs on Friday nights, but this is a game in Provo. Yeah. We understand the size of the team at BYU and how just you mentioned earlier their quarterback, the BYU playing so well this year. I'm super disappointed in what Oklahoma State has been this year. It's a bummer. College football is better when Mike Gundy's in the mix, and this is just not the year for them.
Nope. Agreed. And yeah, I mean, you don't have a look ahead moment because they're playing UCF next week, and UCF is not probably what people thought they might be coming into the season.
UCF game is quarterback.
What's that?
Gus Malzahn benched KJ Jefferson.
Yeah. Things are not going well for the Malzahn-Jefferson relationship. That's for sure. They don't have Utah until 2 weeks later, so it's not like they're looking ahead to that either. So, they might be on task here, but could be a bit of a letdown game. Oklahoma State still has some talented folks on that roster. So if BYU does let their guard down, could be an interesting result. But it feels like BYU is pretty well focused on the mission at hand this year. Miami, Louisville. Miami laying 4.5. We're going to lay the points. Louisville is a little bit of an upstart, but I don't know that they got the horses to stay with Miami.
No, Miami's. I understand that Miami has struggled the last couple of weeks. I got that. They're better than Miami. Or they're better than Louisville. Sorry. They're better than Louisville. And Louisville's pretty good.
Yeah.
Louisville's pretty good. But Miami's just a much better team. Cam Ward bounce back week. Have to imagine they get things turned around there.
Dodgers struggling with the Mets. We got a lot of action going on these the 54 or 57 straight days of football, and playoffs are going on in Major League Baseball. And oh, by the way, we're going to preview the NBA season tomorrow on Backyard Buckets, so tune in for that as well. Mike's a Mets fan, so he's reveling in the Dodgers going 3-0.
Let's go Mets, dude. Let's see a Subway Series.
Right? Yeah. Yanks are taking care of business over there against the Guardians.
Yes, they are.
Clemson, Virginia. Clemson laying 21.5. On top of the fact that Clemson's offense has been looking better the last few weeks, Virginia's bad. Bad. Really bad. Clemson, 21.5. Definitely not enough. This might be a 5-score game potentially. Virginia's just bad.
Yep. I feel like we also get a lot of Clemson early games. And so, like, they're kind of low-key good in Clemson again. Do you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? They're never like
They're
the
not in
national
primetime
game.
Yeah.
Like they're playing on ACC Network this week,
Yep.
and I think that's kind of how Dabo wants it, right? Like Dabo after the week 1 game, and then everyone was like, "Oh, fucking Dabo sucks." Transfer portal, da da da. He's just quietly gotten the boys back on track, and they're humming down there right now.
What was his old thing when they were? It's what us on the bus against everybody else or whatever that stupid fucking saying was.
I don't fuck Dabo.
I'm sure he's using that shit again this year as they're not necessarily playing in the like you said, not in the spotlight.
Every single game that Clemson plays is a look ahead game to the Saturday after Thanksgiving when Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart are just going to be teeing off on Cade Klubnik. Every single week is a look ahead for Clemson.
Yeah.
Bums.
Nebraska, Indiana. We're both on Nebraska plus 6.5. Indiana's a great story, man. It really is. 6-0 for the first time in like 200 years. And they weren't even expected to be anything this year. Like they new coach, new system, a lot of transfers in and out, a lot of changing of the guard there. But I forget the coach's name, but he was at JMU last year. Signetti, that's what it is. And he was at JMU last year, and we know what JMU did last year. They end up getting into a bowl game because the NCAA relents on its fucking stupid stance.
Yep.
All this dude does is win, man. All he does is win. He's 6-0 at Indiana. They went fucking undefeated last year at JMU. Like, not undefeated, but they won a ton of games last year at JMU. But Nebraska's quiet right now. They got the one bad loss, and it's really kind of taken them out of the national spotlight. They're not ranked. They're still 5-1. They haven't looked quite in rhythm, but I think they've got too much talent for Indiana. I know I missed 2 of these money line picks last week. I'm gonna have a money line ticket on Nebraska this week.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. The Nebraska defensive line, they call them the black shirts, and this group of black shirts is very good in Nebraska, and they can absolutely wreak havoc in the backfield. I meant to pull up. So, are you familiar with the havoc stat? It's kind of a new stat. So it's determined by the rate, right? So your havoc rate is passes defended, sacks, fumbles, and like turnovers, stuff like it's all plus defensive plays.
Okay.
And I meant to have it pulled up. I don't have it in front of me.
QB pressures and stuff like that.
Yeah. It's whatever is not a neutral defensive play or a negative defensive play. It's whatever your plus defensive plays are, right?
Okay.
And I know that Nebraska's team ranks fairly well in that. Again, I meant to have it up in front of me. I don't. But I have to imagine the Black Shirts from Nebraska are ready to go in and prove that they have what it takes to win a ranked game on the road, because this is a team that is looking to compete for the Big 12 title.
Yeah.
Now they kind of have a tough schedule at the back end of the season, and it starts here with this Illinois game or Indiana game that nobody really expected to be what it is. We thought that maybe Nebraska would be the 16th ranked team in the country.
Yeah.
And Indiana would be the unranked team, right? But kind of role reversal. And Matt Rule is a very, very good college coach, especially turning programs around. We saw what he did at Baylor, what he did at Temple. I think that Nebraska will be ready. I think this game is going to be pretty good. It's always fun to watch Dylan Raiola. And then you mentioned it, Curt Cignetti, just a heck of a coach, man. Like, he brought over a bunch of guys from JMU. He did a phenomenal job there, got them to their first FBS bowl game. I mean, hats off to him. He's just been incredible. But I think that I have to imagine Nebraska's more than they've seen all year long. Like they beat FIU, Western Illinois, UCLA, Charlotte, Maryland, and Northwestern. Like that's not murderer's row of who's who. You know what I'm saying?
Right. You're talking Maryland and Northwestern, who are going to finish in the basement of the Big Ten. UCLA in their first year in the Big Ten, who also hasn't looked great. They played Penn State, sort of tough, enough not to lose by 50. Not a great team, and then they're out of conference. Obviously, hasn't been great either. So it is a little bit. It does feel like it might be a little bit of fool's gold. And Nebraska, like you said, it might be the first time that they really see something that's more than what they've seen so far this year.
Yep.
For sure. Great story, though. Great story. It's fun. They're having fun up there in Indiana. That's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Hoosiers, baby.
Yeah, boy. Shout out Bobby Knight.
Shout out.
Mizzou hosting Auburn, only 4.5 points here, coming off the blowout win against UMass. Mizzou welcomes an SEC foe. Auburn, who we've seen play some teams tough this year, but also an Auburn team we've seen fumble the bag quite a bit this year. We're both laying the points with Mizzou. You feel pretty comfortable laying those points? You think Mizzou's going to cover decently here? Is it a 2-score game?
Probably. I was prepared to come into this segment and talk about how I thought Auburn was a little bit better than people are giving them credit for. And then I went and looked, and it's like, maybe that's just in my own head, because I feel like they've been in games late and then like fallen apart. I think that their offense is better than people are thinking, because we got up to that terrible start. They were playing 2 quarterbacks, and then you and I both got on here talking about how Hugh Freeze fucking threw his guys under the bus and then ran him over again, the quarterback specifically. But like, I think that offense has not been terrible as of late. But yeah, you said it earlier in the year that you're not betting against Missouri, and then they didn't cover for like 2 weeks. But now I guess they covered last week, so I'm back on it.
Lost, and then they covered. Yeah, they covered last against UMass, though.
Yeah, still, hey, a cover's a cover.
It is. It was a big number too.
Yeah, you could tell me this is like a 10-point game going into the fourth quarter, and then they score 2 touchdowns to win by 24. Like that's a game script I could see playing out in reality.
Sure. Yeah. No, I agree for sure. I think Auburn's gonna be pesky and stick around, but I do think Mizzou probably covers pretty comfortably. You know, something like a 38-24 or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Or maybe they do separate at the end and win by that 24. I wouldn't be surprised by that either.
What time is that game?
I think that's in the 1:30, the 12:30 window.
It's noon, 12:30 noon, whatever, same thing.
Yeah. East Carolina against Army, the aforementioned service academy that's now in the top 25. They are just it's a whole new era. We're used to Air Force used to be this, right? Air Force was kind of the anomaly of the service academies. Army and Navy always kind of ran the triple option. You go back to like there was the days of the Roger the Dodger. He kind of wung it around, but for the most part, they've traditionally been a very triple option. Air Force was kind of the first one to really embrace the forward pass and change that offense. But now you see Army is just winging it all over the place. East Carolina is a fine team in the American Conference, but Army's too much for them. 16 points. I'll lay that all day. 16 points with this Army team. They're going to score probably 40, and they might give up 20, and we're going to cover the 16.
Yeah, Army's going to crush them. That's my analysis. Army is going to crush Eastern Carolina.
Love it. Bama, Tennessee. We're both laying the points here. Maybe a little bit of a bounce back, but also maybe still some growing pains for Tennessee. They haven't looked great 2 straight weeks. Bama laying 3 going into Knoxville. Is this kind of the ship week for Kalen DeBoer and company?
This is a win the game by 4 points kind of week for Kalen DeBoer. 4 is not a huge margin,
right?
But I don't know for sure. You know, you could convince me this is a blowout by Alabama because their offense starts to click. Jalen Milroe doesn't turn the ball over. That defense plays pretty stingily, right? And then Nico struggles again. They bottle up Samson from Tennessee and kind of force Nico to throw the ball to beat them. That's something that I could very well see happening. But then at the same time, you could tell me like, oh, that Tennessee defensive line is really, really good. They're putting pressure on Milroe. They're containing him. They're taking away the deep balls and forcing him to hit like intermediate passes, which we all know is not like his strength. He can do it, but it's not his strength, right? And then Nico like has a breakout game. You know, he's playing at home, playing in front of the home crowd. Like You could talk me into either one. Now, if I were to say which I think is more likely, I think that Alabama gets the ship back in the right direction. I think that is much more likely to happen than Tennessee locking down Jalen Milroe and then Nico having a great game. Just because I've seen Jalen Milroe do it a number of times rather than have seen Nico do it.
Yep.
So I lean more towards Alabama running away with this, which is why I took the 4, or I'm laying the 4, I guess. I don't have a super strong conviction about this game either way. I just think it's going to be an entertaining game that ends up being like a 6 to 9 point margin of victory.
Yeah, I think I agree basically across the board. I could see this being like a 21-17 or a 24-20 type game, and Bama covers by the 4, right? We just get enough to cover. I'm not sure what I expect to see from Tennessee going forward. This Tennessee team might be 2025 SEC champions, right? Like maybe that's what this Tennessee team is, where Nico gets another year under his belt. He's got a year of seasoning in the SEC, because it's still, the SEC has changed a lot in terms of conference realignment, but they kind of just got better, right? Like you added Texas, you had Oklahoma. They've added, A&M to the mix. They've added Mizzou to the mix, and Mizzou's a very good team now. Like this SEC continues to just be a murderer's row. And we just saw this past weekend with Tennessee and Florida played them tough. So maybe that's what we're going to see going forward is Tennessee's going to get some seasoning for Nico, and they're going to be a tough team next year. But it does feel there's something missing with Tennessee, and maybe that's all it is. It's just Nico's not comfortable yet.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just what it is. All right, Notre Dame, Georgia Tech. You're taking the points with Georgia Tech. I'm going to lay in with Notre Dame. Georgia Tech's been very kind of Jekyll and Hyde this year. Last week was a bit of a revenge game for Mr. Haynes. And he delivered. Anybody who played any of his props cashed some money there. But I look at this Notre Dame defense. I think they're going to be able to stifle this Georgia Tech offense. This could be like a 20-7 cover, like a very weird cover. It's 11 points. Maybe they scored just enough to cover against Georgia Tech. You're taking the points though.
I am. Georgia Tech is a running team. They've been successful running the ball, just about all year long. And whenever Notre Dame has struggled, it's been against offenses that were able to run the ball and control the clock on them. I'm just kind of choosing to believe that Georgia Tech will be able to hold on to the ball and create long drives and scoring opportunities. And Riley Leonard I know that he played very well this past week. He's not an explosive quarterback. Stanford's a bad team.
Stanford's bad.
Yeah, I'm taking Georgia Tech, man. 11's a lot of points, but they can win by 10 and not cover, right? Like it could be a 2-score game and they still don't cover for us.
Yeah. Nope. That's entirely fair. All right. Michigan, Illinois. We're both on Illinois +3. This is another. I don't understand this line. I really don't understand this line. I don't know what Vegas knows that we don't. Maybe it's the fact that Purdue kind of played in this shootout against Illinois. Michigan ain't playing no fucking shootout.
Nope.
If Michigan's able to run the ball 43 times in this game and control the clock for about 45 minutes of the game, sure, I'll lay the points with Michigan. I just don't see it happening. And I also I saw what I saw from Altmaier this past weekend. He's a fucking playmaker, man.
Yeah.
I know the Michigan defense is still good. I just don't know that Michigan's offense is going to score double digits. And I think Illinois gets like at least 14 on them. So I probably am going to put an Illinois money line. I haven't decided yet, but I think Illinois with 3 points is plenty. Maybe it's a 10-9 fucking Michigan win or something, but they need it to be that if they're going to win this game. They can't play a shootout with Illinois like Purdue did.
No, we talked about it, and you said it in the last thing we were talking about last week that Altmaier is just a playmaker, man. I said it going to the Penn State game. They like to get teams down, and I know the Purdue game didn't. That was kind of a shootout, which is uncharacteristic of what Illinois likes to do. But Michigan also likes to drag teams down and play rock fight type of games. And if it comes down to that, I'm going with the quarterback that I've seen make plays all year long in Altmaier, as opposed to Jack Tuttle, I guess, is going to be playing quarterback for Michigan. I don't know
might
if they
see
go back
Alex
to
Orgy again.
Yeah, it's like I'm going to go with the team that I know has an established playmaker at quarterback and is used to playing in low-scoring games. But I've also seen them win a high-scoring game, such as last week, the Purdue game, right? It's at Illinois. Illinois hasn't been this good at football in a long time. That crowd is going to be hyped up, ready to go to get a ranked victory, right? Who wouldn't want to be the team to knock Michigan out of the top 25? Like, I agree with you that I don't really understand the line. I'm not sure. So what this says to me is that on a neutral field, Michigan is a 5.5 point favorite,
right?
Because I'm giving them like the 2.5 for at home, right? So that you're telling me that Michigan's a 5.5 point favorite over a ranked opponent, a conference ranked opponent. Like, I don't really a team that just scored 50 last week. I mean, right. I don't know that
Michigan
I'm jiving
scored
with
50
that.
yet this year.
No, I think their high is 30 or 27.
I mean, like combined. Like,
oh, yeah, they have, but
yeah.
There's also a team that lost to Washington.
Yes.
So, I think Illinois is just better, truthfully.
Yeah, fair. Charlotte Navy, another one like the Army game. Yeah, Service Academy ranked. I think they're going to run it up against Charlotte. 17 ain't enough. They're going to beat the brakes off of Charlotte. In Annapolis, Charlotte's not a good team. They're kind of an also ran even in a small conference. Yeah, give me Navy by fucking 50.
I agree.
Run it up.
I agree. The cool thing about the service academies too is we talk a lot about their offenses kind of changing and adapting to the new times. But their defenses are playing incredibly well.
Also. Oh yeah,
like they're extremely disciplined, which is not shocking from an academy, right? But like their defenses are playing very, very well. Charlotte might not score this weekend.
They might. Yep. Texas A&M, Mississippi State. We're on opposite sides of this one. Maybe I'm going to get burnt again by thinking Mississippi State is fucking terrible because they are. I liked what I saw from Connor Wegman a week ago with Texas A&M. I believe in that defense. I think they've got more opportunities to make plays than maybe a Georgia does this year. I think we're seeing as the season goes, the Bama game might be the anomaly for Georgia, vice a sign that they have playmakers. Whereas I think A&M has enough firepower to complement their incredible defense. I don't know if Mississippi State scores many points in this game. If A&M keeps them in single digits, I think A&M is going to get in the 20s, and that'll be enough to cover. Maybe I'm fooling myself again with Mississippi State, but I just don't believe they've got enough to score points against Texas A&M.
Sure. We just watched Georgia score 41 on this Mississippi State team, and I think that the A&M offense is probably better than Georgia. They probably will get into the high 30s against this Mississippi State team. I know it's a lot of points. I'm pretty sure I went with A&M, right?
I may have messed that up. I thought you had Mississippi State. Let me double check.
I do have Mississippi State. Okay.
They're at home.
Yeah. Also, team we watched score 31 against Georgia, right?
Yep.
So it's a lot of points. I'm taking the team that has a potential to be on an upswing in Mississippi State, and to cover the 15.5. Is that what we decided?
Yep.
Yeah. It's up to 16 now. So awesome.
Money thinks it's saying that.
Yeah. Look, any given Saturday, right? It's a conference game. They lost by 10 to Georgia. Who's to say they can't lose by 8 to Texas A&M? You know?
Sure. Yeah. Nope. They could lose by 15 and you still cover.
Hey. They could lose by 15.5 at this point.
That's fair. I don't know how we're going to score a half, but we'll get there.
Moral victory, Scary. It counts for half a point.
Absolutely.
South Carolina only lost by 1.5 to Bama last weekend.
LSU heads to Fayetteville to take on the Hogs, led offense by Bobby Petrino. LSU coming off that emotional storm the field win against Ole Miss. I don't know that they're going to be able to keep the momentum going from that. I think this is a bit of a letdown week for LSU. On top of the fact that I think Woo Pig is playing pretty goddamn well. I think Sam
Pittman.
I wanted to say Pickett, and I don't know why. Pittman has them going in the right direction, and I think Bobby Petrino has been a big add for them offensively. They're pretty tough. I just don't think I can. I don't think I can trust LSU to follow up that emotional home win with a road win against a team that I think is much better than their ranking would show in Arkansas.
Yeah, I mean, Arkansas is a good team. They had that double overtime loss on the road where they lost their starting running back to Oak State.
Yep.
And then they lost to an A&M team, who's a good team, right? Held them to 21 points. And I made the joke earlier that LSU is still a Brian Kelly coach team, and they might not win again this year. Like, yep. I don't think that's the case. I think LSU's good. I mispronounced last week. I said Harold Landry is not going to play the rest of the year for LSU. It's Harold Perkins. That kind of the gadget pass rusher linebacker they have down there. He's still not playing the rest of the year for them, but at least I got his name right this week.
He wears number 7, right?
Yeah. He's their number 7. Yeah. So, yeah, give me Woo Pig. I've always kind of had a soft spot for Woo Pig. I've never viewed them as like a rival or anything to Carolina. So it's one of the few times I get to root for a conference opponent and like not feel awful about it. Plus you mentioned it, Petrino, just a fun guy to root for, right? It's a night game. Bayfield's gonna be crazy. You can do the Carolina thing and lose by 2 and still cover for me. So I think this is going to be a little bit higher scoring of a game than some people might think. We know the Arkansas offense can move the ball, and if Brian Kelly can get that offense moving down there at LSU, maybe they run it up a little bit, right? We go back and forth up and down the field. That'd be kind of fun. Nice Saturday night. I will once again be coming back from a wedding, but a little Saturday night surprise for us.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I think I've had a soft spot going back to like the Felix Jones, Darren McFadden era. That was always fun to watch with that two-headed attack on a couple of NFL running backs. But I'm with you. I do have a soft spot for Arkansas. It's fun to think about a non-Bama, Georgia, Florida SEC team that's sneaky good every once in a while that can punch you in the mouth if you don't pay attention, for sure.
It's also just fun to say Woo Pig.
Woo Pig, absolutely. Georgia, Texas. We're both on Texas minus 3.5 here. Texas is just too good, and I don't know that Georgia. I don't know who scores for Georgia against this Texas defense.
That's Texas, maybe the best team in the country. Like, and we, you and I have been on all year long. Even going back to the Clemson game week 1, they're not a high-flying offense. I know that they scored 41 last week, but Carson Beck threw the ball 48 times. Was Matt Stafford the last quarterback to throw the ball 48 times for a Georgia team? Like,
it certainly was never Stetson Bennett.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Murray, maybe. Like,
yeah, he and AJ Green, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's just 48 throws to score 41 points against the Mississippi State team. That's not great. The offense doesn't speak to me. They really, really struggle to score against Kentucky. Texas is far better than Mississippi State and definitely better than Kentucky. I mean, I'm with you. I don't know who scores for Georgia. Vegas they must just love Georgia, man, to make this line 3.5 after what Texas just did to Oklahoma last weekend.
Right. Yeah.
Like, if I'm Texas, that's disrespectful. Like, to not even make it a touchdown.
Bulletin board material.
Yeah,
because as you mentioned, home field advantage is like a field goal.
Yeah.
So you're telling me on a neutral site, you're essentially, this is a pick'em game, right?
That's crazy.
Maybe Texas -1, but this is basically a pick'em game, is what Vegas is telling us on a neutral site. I don't know. That'd be bulletin board material if I was Sark. I know that.
Yeah, fucking, what do they say? Not horns down. Hook 'em.
Hook 'em.
Hook 'em. Fuck Georgia.
UCF, Iowa State. I mentioned a bit ago, UCF isn't what we thought they would be coming into the season, and you followed up with the fact that Gus Malzahn has benched his quarterback. Iowa State by a boatload, probably at home, and a UCF team that seems to be in a bit of disarray. An Iowa State team that's on the upswing in a Big 12 that feels like it's going to be down. With Utah being down, this might be like a 3-horse race with the team in Ames, the team in the Little Apple, and the team in Provo. And at the beginning of the season, other than the team in Manhattan, Kansas, I don't think we would have been talking about that triumvirate as the class of the Big 12 with any sense of sanity. That's for sure.
Yeah, not quite. Certainly not BYU.
Right. Exactly.
Certainly not BYU.
Exactly. All right. Speaking of the team in the Little Apple, Kansas State's laying 3.5 against West Virginia. I am not making the same mistake I made last week with West Virginia. Give me Kansas State. I know it's a road game. I know they can get weird up there in Morgantown and get crazy, but I think Kansas State's just they're going to be too talented for West Virginia on Saturday night.
Yeah, I agree. We watched them go into Colorado, which has become one of the most hostile places to play.
Yeah,
obviously with Dion coming into town, right? They get turned up there.
The backdrop is nuts there in Boulder too.
Yeah. I mean, West Virginia,
it's
West Virginia's pretty nice to look at too.
Beautiful there too.
Yeah,
I'm not bagging on West Virginia.
K-State's just better. It makes me feel good that Avery Johnson came back in the game and played pretty well after he went out and went to the locker room. I have to imagine they'll probably give him some vitamin T if he's in pain a little bit, but I think he'll be fine. K-State's good. That offense can hum, man. That offense can hum, and their defense is good enough.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. Stanford finishes the week out for us hosting SMU. SMU's laying 16.5. I mentioned the whole time zone travel thing. SMU isn't going to be traveling the full distance of time zones, but they are traveling about half the country. Stanford's just not that good. And SMU has figured it out. I praise them for finally settling on a quarterback, and he looks like he's the real deal. That offense looks like they've got some real juice. And we just watched Notre Dame boat race Stanford last weekend, and I think SMU's offense is better than Notre Dame's. Stanford might put up 14 instead of 7 against SMU, but I think SMU's going to be in the 40s.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. They scored 29, 59, 66, 42, 34. Their only loss was home to BYU, and they only lost by 2 points. Like,
that looks like not a bad loss anymore either.
Yeah. SMU's a good team, man. SMU's a good team. And we talked about how great their kit is. I mean,
oh yeah. That red, white, blue combo. Ooh.
This is gonna be a nice game to just kind of close out the Saturday night with.
Yeah, for sure. All right, as we do every week. What's that?
I might play that one up to like 20.5.
Alternate line. Yeah, I like that. Little chase the juice. I think that's a good game you can chase it with, for sure.
Yeah, I'll be suffering my losses from the rest of the day. So
licking wounds.
Yeah. Damn it.
Well, as we do every week, man, you got anything off the board you want to highlight for week 8?
I do. I sent it to you earlier this week.
Yeah.
New Mexico State is playing at Utah State. Now, if you're a degenerate like Gary and myself, who I'm sure was locked in on Middle Tennessee and Kennesaw State last night, that finished, was it 14-5? This game,
I didn't catch that right at the kickoff. I was I forget what I was watching. I was watching baseball last night for a little bit, and I flipped over to that, and it's 7-2, and I'm like, this is exactly what I expected from this fucking game.
Yep. Oh yeah. I mean, he had a 1-win team and a winless team going at it last night. Like, it was 7-2 for like the entire game too. That was the crazy part. And then I had to get up and go to work this morning, but I wanted to watch the end of the Louisiana Tech New Mexico State. It went to double overtime, ended at like 2 a.m.
That was yeah.
I could not.
I did not brave that one, but that was.
But the game
late.
Yeah, that's fucking weekday football, baby. Like
Absolutely.
that's what that is.
Tuesday night fucking football.
Tuesday night. My God, dude. All right. I want to find the most recent because I don't know if it's changed since I sent it to you. But we're talking Utah State. Okay, so it hasn't changed. Utah State and New Mexico are playing a game this weekend, and the opening total number was 78.5. 78.5. That's the highest I have ever seen in a college, definitely a pro, but college football game. 78.5. That is incredible.
That's
now
wild.
I gave out last week the Texas State and who did they play last week? Texas State and somebody.
They lost. It was
Arkansas State.
Yes.
And it was like 61 or something.
The Red Wolves.
And they only got it to 51.
Yep.
But I think when you see a number in the 70s, dude, you have to play it.
Oh,
you have to. It's a 4:00 game. It's jammed right in the middle of the slate. It's two awful teams, but their offenses, well, really their defenses are just terrible. Their offense is pretty good. Like New Mexico's averaging 35.5 points a game. So if you want fun this weekend and you don't want to watch, Georgia, Texas, tune into Utah State and New Mexico because there will be fireworks. I can almost assure you of that.
Yeah, for sure. I gave out I had a buddy ask for a pick tonight to get some action in because it's Wednesday night. We have college football.
Yep.
We love weekday college football.
Yep.
I gave out the Sam Houston versus Western Kentucky. 54.5, I think, was the line at the time that I gave it out. I said I'm on the over because if I'm watching weeknight football, I want a bunch of fucking points, especially if I'm watching the Toppers against the Bearcats with a K. That is my favorite. There are some really great college mascots like the Banana Slugs and Dirt Bags, and there's some really cool ones, but like spelling Bearcats with a K brings me back to like AOL Instant Messenger.
Oh yeah.
Where you would do that and you put a Z on the end of things instead of an S, like just being a goofball teenager. Like I imagine like Sam Houston's great nephew is the one who named that mascot and was like, you got to spell it with a K.
Spell it with a K, Grandpa. But by the way, the game is at 31 at halftime.
It is.
We're trending. Western Kentucky has 18 first downs.
That's a lot of fucking first downs for a half.
Yeah. Jesus, that's crazy.
That's long drives.
Yeah.
I will be tuned into that after this though to see if we do hit our over. And of course, because it's weeknight college football, I'll be locked in. But we want points.
Dude, anything else off the board jump out at me? Is Tulane back this week?
They should be.
Yes, they're hosting Rice. Tulane is favored by 22. Oh boy.
That's a big number to cover.
I mean, we got to ride with it, though, right?
I will be on that ticket. That's a big number.
JMU is a 9.5 point favorite on the road.
Not great. We got that working in our favor, but
sure.
22 is a lot of points.
Surprising line of the week. Let me see if I can find what the look ahead line was before I tell you. Oh wait, I gotta go back to spreads. I'm looking at overs. Spread for this game. Okay, so it was always kind of large. Surprising line of the week, Vanderbilt hosting Ball State, 26-point favorites for Vandy. Yeah.
Listen, if you're playing college DFS, you better have Pavia in your fucking lineup this weekend against Ball State. Yeah. Ball State's a bad program.
Yep.
And Vandy's riding some momentum right now. 26, you said it is?
26.
That's a big number for a Vanderbilt program.
Yeah. Two more quickly.
Yep.
Iowa, 5.5-point road favorite to Michigan State. Iowa, the over-under in this game is 40.5. Iowa scored 40 by themselves last week.
Yeah.
So
good for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And also UNLV, unranked UNLV, is going to Corvallis as 7.5-point favorites. Only loss of the season was that crazy Syracuse game. Otherwise, they would still be ranked.
Yeah.
So they're looking to get back on the right. They beat Utah State last week, but they're looking to get back into the ranked status. So that could be an interesting game late at night if you're interested in seeing a team trying to jump back in the top 25.
Yeah. Love it. Let's see. Yeah, not a whole lot jumping off the board for me. So appreciate the insights. Mm-hmm. We are gonna tune in and lock in with the Sam Houston State game. Sam Houston State game against Western Kentucky. Rooting for the points. Let's get in the 60s so we don't have to sweat this thing out.
Yep.
But anyway, man, excellent episode. Appreciate those chiming in the chat. Got another good weekend of college football. It's we had the big weekend October 12th, but still some pretty good matchups this weekend. And as we creep closer and closer to playoff time, these games are going to start to get a little more nip tuck. I know the 12-team playoff changes the calculus a bit, but we're running out of undefeated teams here. And we're starting to get to the point where now a second loss could spell a bit of disaster for certain teams. Looking at you, Ole Miss, potentially that could have been a bit of a death knell for them. 2 conference losses to inferior opponents. Games like that, I know it's not the same when one loss hurt as much as it used to under the old system, but we're getting late in the season and we're going to start having a lot more conversations in terms of playoff implications for teams as we go forward. Go ahead.
I want your opinion before.
Yep.
So I know that we have long lamented transfer portal being kind of like a bad thing. And I still think that under the current structure, it's not ideal. Do you think that because we've had back-to-back weekends of incredible college football, obviously not this past weekend, but the weekend prior being the big upset weekend, and then this past weekend just being like super competitive games up and down the board, do you think that college football is currently, playoff aside, do you think college football is like in an incredible spot, or do you still think they need to make like drastic changes to NIL transfer, stuff like that?
I like what NIL has done in terms of the talent being more dispersed. You don't have 5 stars sitting behind 5 stars anymore, right? You used to have that, like Bama. They'd roll a 5-star linebacker out there, and then the following year when that guy got drafted in the first round, they'd roll another fucking 5-star linebacker out there who'd been sitting and waiting behind, Reggie Ragland for 2 years and decided, now I'm going to be the guy and I'm going to be the next number 1 pick from Alabama. We don't have that anymore, and I think we start to see how that cascades. I think there still needs to be some changes to the transfer portal. I don't love how much it really just feels like free agency, but they don't want to call it that necessarily. So I think I'd be comfortable with one of 2 things happening. And I think one of them is more likely than the other. I think going forward, we are going to end up with college football breaking off from the NCAA, and it's going to be these schools signing kids to contracts. And the contracts are going to be linked to you have to stay for 3 years, or you have to stay for 2 years, or there's a buyout, those sorts of things. Or we get back to the old system where if you transfer, you have to sit out a year. I always thought that was enough of a prohibitive, kind of punitive measure to keep kids from just bouncing, from one team to the next. Because we saw like UNLV, right? Like, and you mentioned it with Juice Wells and some of these guys that they get a payday and then they're like, I'm just going to redshirt anyway and I'm going to go somewhere else next year. Or like they get the payday and then they leave. There was the one guy, I forget if it was he was at USC, took money and went somewhere else, or was somewhere else, took money and went to USC. But there's guys that have done that. I don't want that in this system. I love that the kids are kind of they kind of have the autonomy to be able to get paid and play a game because they make a ton of money for these fucking universities. They should always have been getting a chunk, but I think we're going to end up with contractual, realistic, like you come to Bama, you sign on for 3 years, that sort of thing, and there's NIL money attached to it or whatever. I just think that it's still too much Wild West, too much free agency, too many guys playing 1 year here, 1 year, 1 year here, 1 year, right? Like, give me some of that old kind of like, if you're going to transfer, you're going to sit a year, you got to really want to move to another program.
Yeah.
That's my stance on it. I think we're in a good spot though. I think you're absolutely right. Like the competitiveness of this past weekend and the upsets of the previous weekend are very good evidence for the fact that like the system is not completely broken and the NIL thing is helping kind of cultivate that across the landscape. Diego Pavia would have never gone to fucking Vanderbilt, right? Like he'd have been transferred into a different program and whatnot. So
yeah. Okay. I think I agree. I think we are in a good spot, but changes still need to be made. A little more solidification. There we go. A little more solidification of the rosters in terms of the transfer portal. I love that we're getting all of these conference matchups between big programs. I wish that they were like Georgia, Texas this weekend. I wish there was not an SEC game. I wish that it was a Big 12 SEC game. I'm glad it's happening, but like, I wish that the realignment had not occurred and that teams had just been more willing to play cross conference, right? Yep. So like, I would have been more inclined to enjoy a 12-team playoff if we didn't have conference realignment, because then that would it would like encourage the teams to play bigger matchups across the conference, right? Because you can only get one lock from a conference, and then you still need like a good strength of schedule to be highly ranked team. I just wish there was a way to have the previous conference construction while still encouraging big time matchups. That's what I wish for.
I think if realignment hadn't happened before if the 12-team playoff had happened before realignment, I think we would have been less quick for these teams to jump conferences. I think the money was so different between like the Big 12 and the SEC and the Big 10 and the Pac-12. Like that was such a big deal. If the 12-team playoff had happened before that, we might have seen a little more of like TV money being shared across conferences, and we might not have seen as much realignment. It always kind of felt like an inevitability that the NCAA really wants to go to these like super conferences, which I think is going to be a bad thing in the long run, but I think it's Thanos, like it's inevitable. But man, I agree with you 100%. Like I just feel like if we had the 12-team playoff, teams might have been more willing to schedule Oregon, Ohio State as an out-of-conference game, Texas, Georgia as an out-of-conference game, rather than having it have to be a Big 10 or an SEC conference game.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. It's unfortunate, but
yeah,
it's the world we live in.
Yeah, for sure. But all right, well, for Bentley and everybody else here at Backyard Sports, this has been another episode of Tailgate Trash Talk. We'll see you same time next week, same channel. We are out.